We're going to call the meeting to order. This is the Holyoke City Council Subcommittee of Finance. On my right is at-large Councilor Mike Sullivan. To my left, at-large Councilor Peter Tallman. And to my far left, our Ward 7 and President of City Council, Todd McGee. We have no previous minutes yet, so I just suggest that we keep item number 1 on the table.
Motion to keep item number 1 on the table.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Item number 2 is introduced under my name, that in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, the City Council accept the provisions of the Shannon CSI grant and authorizes the establishment of a fund and other method appropriate for the accounting of the receipts, expenditures, and all resources associated with the administration of said grant. Motion to remove from the table
So moved.
for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We have with us this evening from the Police Department, John Hart from the Boys and Girls Club, and the lead, I believe, Eileen Kavanaugh, the lead on the Shannon grant for the number of outside agencies that benefit from this wonderful grant that we used over the years. And we have a very special appearance from Holyoke High School, the principal of Holyoke High School, Dana Brown. And Dana is also a former city councilor in Malden, Mass., so he understands the language that we're about to speak. John, at the last meeting, the chief and you were here. We had a discussion about this to set up this meeting tonight. Is there anything else from the police perspective that you wish to add to it? I think we understand the Shannon grant. I believe the total is close to 400,000, 450, 385,000. And we understand the breakdown of the number of agencies that it goes through, but it does funnel through the city before it heads out in good directions. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Okay. Eileen, did you want to give us a brief synopsis? We have some new members and some people, I think, out in the audience. We are live on TV, so everybody knows. I forgot to tell you that. But we have some people in the audience, I think, who would like to be more informed about some of these important grants that come in. And if you could, you guys, if you want to come in, we got a nice informal. We also have with us this evening our Ward 5 counselor, Linda Bacon, who loves to attend the Finance Committee meeting. She says if I have to attend all her Ordinance Committee meetings, she's going to attend my Finance Committee meetings, right? At least part of them. But this is a somewhat of a roundtable discussion. What we do, and all the committees do, is we sort out an item that's been placed here by the full City Council to get it back for a recommendation for a full City Council vote. This case this evening, our challenge is to get everything back in front of the council for tomorrow night. So Eileen, if you could just run us through the.
So just to give you a little history, the Shannon Community is a statewide grant funded through the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, and the city of Cleveland has actually been a recipient of CSI funding for over 10 years now through eligible for funding. And so it's a collaborative partnership between the city, local nonprofit organizations, and your local law enforcement. And so, we've been operating as a whole Chicopee, because we also are in partnership with Chicopee for, collaborative effort. The intent is, it is a suppression, prevention, intervention grant, violence, and eligible for Shannon. You have a certain kind of threshold that you're at according to the state, for high crime. We've been operating, like I said, for about 12 years. We have had different partners throughout the years, certainly, but there have been a long time. Obviously, the Hoyle Police Department, the Boys and Girls Club is volunteering. Then throughout Chicopee Boys and Girls Club, Chicopee. Our partners to reflect the needs of getting involved in and what is going to possibly we have about 3 years ago a relationship, a discussion. And so our day program is and Mr. Brown is actually here to speak. But it is our understanding as a Shannon Collaborative that it is not a whole district, or excuse me, small fraction. It is a small program within a large school, and the majority of it is really promoting student leadership, voice among the that we were looking to partner with. Training the circle process, which is about restoration for your actions and words, and then also supporting some teacher stipends. So, I think what I'm here tonight to try to promote as much as possible is that the RJ program has done an excellent job, in my opinion, honestly, at promoting student leaders within our community. It's important to our community as we promote and are looking to, thank you, promote student leaders. And it is not been implemented probably to the best and most fullest effect. There's been a lot of
turnover at the high school. There's been a lot of change and administrative changes and staff turnover, quite honestly. So it's been a difficult program to really to do school-wide. And so I just want to take away the misconception that this is a school-wide discipline policy. That's not what the intent is. And certainly Shannon dollars are not school discipline dollars. Shannon dollars are youth violence prevention money to support a community that is plagued with high rates of youth crime, especially related to drug and gang violence.
You always talk so slow at your board meetings? I can't write that quick.
I have an awful lot to say, Joe, trust me. I've been around for a little while.
The microphone wasn't on, maybe she should repeat it.
No.
Do you know how challenging that would be? I work off of sticky notes most of the time.
Principal Brown, I had a conversation with Eileen before, and John was here at the last meeting, and I think Dr. Zweig explained to you part of my concerns. And Eileen knows them and John knows them, and I publicly expressed these concerns, is that there is, and Eileen, it was good to point out that this $9,000 isn't going direct into what is the discipline policy of the high school, or for that matter, any school. But that, you know, the good things that the $9,000 does, you know, I think makes some more sense than what we're hearing. But my concerns is directly what I'm hearing from teachers. Not all high school, mind you, but, you know, teachers that are having troubles with the administration, and these are their words, not supporting things that happen in their classroom. One teacher told me that, you know, a student effed him off, told him, I'm not going to do that. He was sent to the office, and 15 minutes later, he came back with the instructions to have a sit down and talk with the whole class about that type of behavior. I literally was in Stop and Shop one time with my wife, who is a retired teacher, and met a teacher who she knew better than me, but who she had taught with over the years, and I knew, who literally broke down crying because of lack of support and backing up the teacher in the classroom and what you, and I don't think I have to preach to you what they need in terms of it. Can you give us some insight as to how at the high school restorative justice is being used, and what are other disciplinary policies and procedures to back up teachers?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you for having me here tonight. I appreciate it. And thank you to one of my Holyoke High School parents. I think when folks hear the term restorative justice, they think all school, and then they think this is how discipline or consequences are meted out in a school. I've worked in schools before with restorative justice, and the way I treated it then and the way I treat it now currently at Holyoke High School is it's part of the solution. It's not the solution, it's part of the solution. I was explaining to Eileen that I was part of a restorative circle last Friday. One of our young students invited me as one of her trusted adults to be part of her circle, where she had to make amends, not so much for her actions, but really for her lack of action, that she was a really bright girl who just had given up on school. Her dad's in jail. Her mom has given up on her and really has thrown up her hands. And this young girl was looking for support. And she selected 4 adults in the building that she thought she could trust, and she selected 4 students in the building that she thought she could trust to try to come up with a plan. So that's a good use of restorative justice. I think we also have this after-school program that's building leaders. I see some of the same issues in Holyoke that are facing my hometown of Malden. Our voting percentage has gone from 50, 60, 70% of the voting populace down to 16, 17% of people eligible to vote. We're not generating enough student leadership, government leaders at young ages. We have to do a better job. And I think, again, restorative justice leadership training is a piece of the puzzle. It's not the solution. We had a reboot sort of at Holyoke High School a couple of months ago of discipline and consequences and systems. We think we're doing a far better job today than we were in September of dealing with student issues. Every single issue is different. I know some people like to think that you just look down a list and say, okay, the student did this, they're going to get that. That's not how high schools with 1,400 students work. We take every situation differently. There have been situations where two students will get into a verbal altercation out in front of the school at dismissal time. That may not be worthy of consequences. It may be worthy of a restorative justice circle at some point in time. Because what I've found as a principal is that sometimes after you mete out the consequences, you still haven't dealt with the issue. So you suspend two students 5 days each for getting into a scuffle outside at the bus stop. After 5 days, those two students return, and sometimes there's a second scuffle because no one talked about what caused it, what was the reason they fought. Have we separated them? Have we changed classes? Have we talked to their parents? So there's a lot of things that go into giving out consequences to students. But again, I think the key really is to think about restorative justice right now at Holyoke High School as one of our tools in a toolbox to help students and staff. It is certainly not the savior. It's not the solution to all of our issues. But again, when you have a student having an issue with a student and they can have a conversation or a meeting about it, that's helpful. When you have a student who can sit down with a teacher, or in some cases we've had a group of teachers sit down with a couple of students to solve issues, that's been more around lack of work, lack of respect. Without breaking anyone's confidence, I can tell you that we've had a couple of issues at Holyoke High School that have been dealt with swiftly and severely when you're thinking about a young person's education, because there were certain things that happened that made that person be unsafe in school for an extended period of time. That's not an issue that would be referred to restorative justice. It's an issue that needed swift and corrective action, and that meant the student had to be out of school for an extended period of time. So I think it's case by case. And again, if you don't remember anything I say tonight, just remember that restorative justice in its current form at Holyoke High School is one part of the solution. And I love the word suppression, intervention, prevention. There's a lot of intervention and there's a lot of prevention coming out of the RJ program. And really, I think it has the potential to be more helpful as Holyoke High School grows and improves over the next couple of years. Thank you.
If you could just elaborate on part of the concerns I brought up, and I think I understand a little bit better about the restorative justice circle and the intent of restorative justice, but I'm a probation officer. I started my career in juvenile court, and I think I have some understanding of the good, the bad, and the ugly at the age that we're talking about. And there's some you deal with the way you're describing. If you have the people involved and the training involved, whether it be youth and teachers and the people that can do the restorative justice, I can get that. But there are some that are a step up, that may be beyond what restorative justice can do, and there are some, quite frankly, that don't belong in the public school setting because they're a danger to other students, themselves, and teachers. How do you distinguish between that, and what do you do to protect that classroom for the student who is not misbehaving, who is not not bringing upon a disciplinary situation on themselves?
Thank you. You raise excellent points, and I think it's not ever singularly, my decision of what to do with the student. Often it's dealing with probation, lawyers, child advocates, counselors, therapists, and again, without breaking confidences, there are a number of students who were students at Holyoke High School in September that now are at other placements in March of 2018. So for a variety of reasons and a variety of issues, the school, Holyoke High School, made the determination that Holyoke High School was not the correct setting for that student, and with support from the school department, we were able to find placements for those students. Understanding that in 2018, as you all know, you no longer can say, schooling is over for you, you're all done, hit the streets. If we say that to a student, we have to find them an alternative setting for schooling, which we have in a number of cases this year. So again, I don't want people to think that a student would, push me up against a wall and then the next week be back in school, do it to another person, and then the next week be back in school. We have made the determination this year that there are a number of students who should not be at Holyoke High School, and they are not there this year. And again, I can't break confidences by giving you any more information than that.
And we appreciate that, and that's, sorry, we appreciate that, and I think it's important that we do talk in very general terms in all situations like this. Does restorative justice apply to every student at the high school? Can restorative justice be used with any disciplinary question of any student at the high school, or is there criteria that has to be met by a student?
Any student or any staff person is able to raise their hand and say, I want to participate in a restorative justice circle. Any student can apply to be part of the restorative justice program. So there are things that administration may prevent a staff person or a student. If we think if there was some type of an offense that we thought was so egregious that restorative justice may not be the answer, I, as the principal, might prevent it. But certainly students have come to us in the past and said, I used to be this person's friend, now they're texting me, they're bullying me online. Any way we can bring together some folks and talk about this in a circle. Anyone in the school can do that. And I would tell you that that's a big one right now happening all across the school, and I'm assuming at other schools that students are getting picked on through social media and electronically.
And
I just want to say that I certainly don't mean to speak in any way for the high school at all, but I had a conversation with the RJ coordinator, and I think to just answer more of your question, the RJ program serves no more than, if even 10%, somewhere between 5 and 8% of all discipline issues at the high school right now. And so the process is that when the youth is, has an infraction, they are referred to school administration, and then someone at school administration is saying that this infraction is eligible for the RJ program to take care of the severity of the infraction, certainly. So not every offense is compatible with the RJ program or appropriate for the RJ program. And I think that's very important to distinguish here, because I think that's a lot of where your concern is coming from. Majority of the RJ programming that's happening, the accountability circles that are happening, are really offenses where our youth are offending, quite honestly, each other. A lot, stemming, there's physical altercations, verbal altercations that are going on, and so that it's much more appropriate for an accountability circle to take place to take care of that discipline issue than it would be for a physical assault of some kind or something much more egregious. So there is a level of determination. I want to make sure that you understand that it's not like, and again, because it's not a whole school discipline policy, RJ just does not kind of just randomly apply to every student. Would certainly be eligible to participate if they were willing to participate, and if the action, the offense, demonstrated that there would be a positive outcome from it. Does that make sense?
And it's certainly less than 10% of all discipline issues that we handle at the school.
Okay, but if a student said, we've always heard absenteeism, leading to school dropout and dropout rates as being a major problem. And, so if discipline is to take place with a student skipping school, can that student ask for it to be handled through RJ?
So we don't look at, so attendance issues really, I think school folks have changed the lens a little bit on attendance issues. What I'm finding right now is that a lot of our students are not truant. They're not skipping school. A lot of our students are just so overwhelmed by some of the things that are happening in their lives outside of school, it's preventing them in a lot of ways from getting to school. Now, skipping class, once they're in school, that's a little bit different issue. That's a discipline issue. And there have been occasions, and again, it's not a lot, but there have been a couple of occasions this year where staff and students have come to us and said, Dana Brown is skipping my history class almost daily. And you speak to Dana Brown, and Dana Brown says, I just don't like that guy. We butt heads every day. He doesn't like me, I don't like him. And a couple of times this year, we have brought that student and staff person together, and the student has stopped skipping that class because we've come to an agreement. But students who skip school or are truant from school, we're working with a whole host of outside agencies and the police and nonprofits, DYS, DC, anyone we can think of to get students back into school who have been, absent from school this year, 25, 35, in some cases 50 days already. And again, a lot of it is not about not liking their English teacher. It's about mental health issues. It's about poverty. It's about parents. It's about a single parent going to work and telling their 17-year-old son he has to stay home and watch the 2-year-old and the 4-year-old while she goes to work. And we're dealing with multiple cases like that this year. So it's we're taking each case individually, but back when I was in high school and you were truant, you skipped school and went to opening day, or you skipped school and went to a shopping plaza, or you got on the trolley. Kids aren't doing that today. They're not truant from school. They're home for some pretty serious reasons, and we're trying to deal with that. And restorative justice is less about dealing with those types of students.
Any other questions from the?
What was the breakdown for the Shannon grant? It's what?
Well, 9,000 is for restorative justice, but I don't think we have the full breakdown, or I don't have it in.
I do, if you want. So, about $40,200 goes to Career Point. Hampden County Sheriff's Department is at roughly, I'm doing approximate numbers here, $15,600 to run the Holyoke Safe Neighborhood Initiative Sports Leagues and to also support the Neighborhood Watch programming. Chicopee Boys and Girls Club is at $63,500, which supports their teen programming in Chicopee, as well as the Chicopee Police Department to go in and do curriculum within the teen center. Holyoke Boys and Girls Club breakdown is $131,400, supporting our teen membership program, our 3 satellite units throughout the city, mentoring program, transportation. Holyoke Police Department is at $87,500, which supports their GSU and MCP work within the community. Holyoke Community College is a partner running a high-set preparation GED course at the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club for $28,000. Holyoke High School's a little under, it's $8,600. And then Gandara Teen Center is a new partner this year and is a little under $10,000 to support their teen center, which is directly working with youth who are DCF and DYS involved.
Eileen, I stuck with you except right before Gandara. What was it?
Sorry, Holyoke High School is at $8,600 for their RJ program, and then Holyoke Community College is at $28,000 for a high-set GED. Yeah, that's a year-long, 4-day-a-week morning program that's being run for free to Holyoke residents, the Holyoke Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you. Councilor McGee? Abstain. Councilor Leahy joined us a few minutes late, coming from work. And he is going to abstain on this issue for conflicts within the police department personnel.
And I'm on the board of directors of the Boys and Girls Club.
And he's on the board of directors of the Boys and Girls Club. Do I have to announce something here?
Well, I don't know what
I
the
don't know
protocol
either,
would be,
but
but
for-
I am
for-
very pleased by it, to be honest with you, Joe. So I'm very
For
much looking
disclosure,
forward.
a
Yes,
member of the McGivern family has joined the Boys and Girls Club Board of Directors. I understand her initiation was last week.
it was.
And Ms. Kelly McGivern, my daughter, is now a member of the, I believe I can just disclose this, as a member of the Boys and Girls Club Board of Directors.
We're very excited about it.
Yes.
It's one committee's loss and another committee's gain.
I hear you.
Inside. Anybody else? Okay. Principal Brown, Eileen, thank you. If I could just make a comment, because my intention is certainly to go forward with the Shannon grant, and I said that up front to everybody here, but my concerns are not about the way you package, and you talked about restorative justice and the concept and the way restorative justice works in those situations that you described. My concerns is, I think, and it's only, I would believe, be natural, that across the board, it's not on a level playing field. And some teachers are not getting the support that they need. And I'm not just talking about the high school, but, you know, I think across the board, there are things that are happening, maybe even that are at our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade levels, that it's being misused or misguided by certain administrators. It doesn't sound like yourself, although I know you have your hands full with a number of things that have happened at the high school, and I'm sure you're dealing with them, and I appreciate it. I think you shared with me that you're one of our much-needed interim principals as these schools are searching for something on a more permanent level. But if there's any message to be sent is, and I've said this for 100 years, is we're all about the students and the students, their education and keeping them in school and trying to keep them off the streets like the Boys and Girls Club does after school, and all the great programs and things that we do, what the police do in terms of community police relations and things like that. But I've always said too is, don't kid yourself. If you're not about the teachers, you're not about the students. And too often I think that is misunderstood, and too often I think our teachers are not supported the way they should be. And I hope you could bring that message back to the right people and keep an eye on it while you are guiding our high school, you know, through some tough times, but getting our high school students through is probably one of the most noblest jobs of anything in this city, to get people graduated and to get jobs and, you know, to go forward as leaders. And God knows we're too old to be doing this now, you know, so we need new leaders coming up the pike, right? Michael?
I'm not saying anything about age.
Can't answer that question anymore. We'll get in trouble.
I can say it about myself, but I'm not the oldest person on this committee, I'll say that, and I won't say who the oldest person is.
That's two shots now.
That's you?
Yeah.
The chair will, if there's no other questions or discussion, the chair will entertain a motion.
Okay, motion approved, Shannon Grant.
Motion made second to approve the Shannon grant, recommend to the full city council that we accept it. And this is the 12th year or the 13th year?
This is the 12th year, I think, 11th year, actually. I think it was 2009, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. I was just listening.
I think it's 2009.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Passes 4-0, one abstention. This will be recommended to the full city council tomorrow evening. We are on TV tomorrow evening too. You know, we think we can answer all the questions if there are any by any city councilors not here this evening. But thank you for participating, and thank you for what you do for all the youth of Hoyoke.
Thank you.
Very much, appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, we just got the injured on duty, and Mike's got some hardball questions for you, John.
Take care now. Thank you very much.
We have our array of, and a couple of these have been hanging around. We've gotten some answers, and I think we're looking to transfer some money for both the police and fire into from salary accounts into injured on duty. I would suggest these are the last two that we have in the packet at the moment, although I'm sure there'll be more to come. But if we could take up item 4 is combined police and fire, patrolmen and firefighters, and item 5 is firefighters, but if for discussion purposes, take them up together. Suspend the rules to take up 4 and 5 together, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, real quick?
You don't want three of them?
3?
Is there 3? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Patrol, 3, 4, and 5.
Yes, Jody. Have you on this agenda?
I'm sorry, I'm having problems reading this agenda, I wrote in the wrong place.
It happens as you get older, Joe, that
3,
happens.
I got the new pair of reading glasses on. Items 3, 4, and 5 together. 3 is, this is transfers from the police department line item for patrolmen, $24,966.37 into the same amount injured on duty. Item 4 is patrolmen, $7,291.81. Firefighters, $4,053.70 from their salary accounts respectively into injured on duty respectfully. And the 5th one is firefighters, $4,053.70 from salary into injured on duty. Just a note, item 4 was, the auditor put them together, thinking that's the way we wanted them, and then we suggested that we would at least separate by department, but this one has been in committee for a little bit. So the motion is removed from the table for discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? John, you can say anything you want, but I think we get the gist of it, but there are a couple of questions this evening. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, just that this is the same thing for every payroll we kind of do, so. And I've given you the numbers in the past and projections.
How often do you transfer money, how often do you look to transfer the money when someone's out injured? Every month, every payroll, or?
Every payroll, when they get paid, if they're out injured during that payroll, even if it's one day, it's gonna transfer and it's gonna come in front of you.
Okay, so we're getting it as it goes with our new rules about transfers.
Right.
And, okay, thank you. Counselor Sullivan?
Sure. John, we got $32,000 here for injured on duty. What, is that for 1 month or 1 week? How much time does that represent?
That, I believe that's for the one payroll. I don't have the names and the breakdown of it, but each, or if that's, a combined of payrolls, if it was, held off and just submitted for a requisition, then that's what it would be. But normally, every payroll, if there is someone injured on duty, that transfer would be done, and we'd be sending it, for payment, and then here first, for approval.
So, I mean, we're seeing more than one pay periods transfer right here?
Not necessarily, I can't speak specifically for those numbers and the amount, but that's normally the procedure, every payroll.
So, can you tell us anything at all about the nature of some of these injuries, just in general? Not names or anything, but how are so many people being injured on duty? It's, in the workplace where I'm at, if we had one injury, we'd have OSHA down on us immediately, wanting a full report on every single incident and how it happened, why it happened. We just get a lump sum.
Yeah,
You know what,
that's not the way it works at the police department. It's the nature of our job. There's various reasons for injured on duty, especially with the winter weather, slip and fall on ice, that's injured on duty. Anything from that to more serious injuries.
well, that's one of the things I'm concerned about. Are we having an abnormally high rate of incidents? Are these
No,
violence-related injuries? Life-threatening. Severe requiring hospitalization, or is it just slipping on the ice and wrenching your knee?
I can't speak for each individual person and their injuries. we've been doing what we can do to decrease the amount of injuries, you know, and we've talked about this numerous times with tasers, with our use of force training. We've increased our training on that and done a lot of other things just to reduce the amount of injuries. And I think the last time or the time before that, I think when the chief was here, we gave you a breakdown, I think maybe a 5 or 10 year breakdown of what injured on duty was, and it's dropped significantly. And I think right now, we're kind of on track to be what we were last year. So, which I think went from like over 300,000 down to like 180 or 190.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure I'm getting all of this, but a person injured in the workplace, is there a full report done on the nature of the injury, follow up with a doctor, verification that actually happened at work, right down the whole list like it would be in a general industry workplace accident?
Yes, we have a complete procedure that we have to follow for every injury.
Okay, so if we needed, not needed, but if we wanted to see a breakdown of how many officers were injured during a given time period, what the nature of the injuries were, what the severity was, would that be something that would be readily available?
Not readily, no. It would take a significant amount of work just to get that, and I don't know the legality of putting forth some specific injuries on individuals.
Once again, I'm not asking about names, I understand that part, but.
Right, but I mean, if we come in and we say, like before you now, you have a number and we say, oh, yes, that was for an assault and battery. Well, we've transferred that money in someone's name, so it can be traced back to that person's name, the amount of money. So just by giving that injury, you are giving that name, but not on its face.
I don't have any more questions, Joe.
And I've asked this in the fire department, I didn't ask the chief the last time, or the police, sorry. I asked this in the fire department, but I didn't ask the chief the last time. I understand, medical reviews are required, I understand, I think there might be opposing medical reviews at times, but when you get into someone who's been out for a lengthy period of time, what perspective does that place on knowing the need to fill that position and the question of the individual, are they coming back to duty? I think the day-by-day ones, the month-by-month ones, I think we understand. You're waiting for medical clearance. But if someone's been out for a lengthy period of time, when do you start looking at it different as a disability and not just a prolonged injured on duty?
Yeah, well, it'd be on a case-by-case basis, but normally right around a year, give or take, we always want to leave the door open for that employee to retain his job. However, like you said, we can't keep someone on injured on duty and pay him when he's not working. But it's been right around a year mark where we start trying to make that determination if they're actually able to come back to work within a short period of time, or if we're gonna go towards a disability route.
Okay. Any other, Councilor Bacon?
I just am interested to know how many patrol men or women we have out injured on duty right now, if you know.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Could you see if
can
we can get a
find that
number
out and
for,
get back
just
to you.
relay it to Ryan for tomorrow night?
In the past, when we got the transfer, we received a list, and
We do, but the problem is, I think, is that the way the auditor, and Todd, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is we're getting, and that's why I asked John the question about when the requests go in. You know, it looks like we're getting groups of people together. And you know, there might be someone who's been out for a longer period of time, you know, without saying individuals' names. And then there's some that, you know, just get put into this transfer. So the middle one here has like 7 names to it, whereas the fire department one only has 1 name to it. And it's, you know, we get an idea, but I think if we could just get the actual number, and it's gotta be a moving target too.
Yeah, I mean, like,
Right, from payroll to
you can have a number there, someone can get injured tonight on midnight. And we'd have an injured duty report, and he'd have to go to Work Connection the following business day. So say he gets injured Friday night. So and he's supposed to work Tuesday, Wednesday, or Saturday, Sunday. So his earliest time he can go to Work Connection is Monday. So he missed 2 days of work. He goes to Work Connection, gets cleared to return to work on Monday. He's off for those 2 days, injured on duty. So those 2 pay days will be transferred to injured on duty.
So what you're telling me is he did his rehab during the Super Bowl?
No.
Good answer.
No, but that's what some minor injuries where someone are really just trying to cover themselves from a more significant injury will go to Work Connection, because we encourage everyone, if you do get injured on the job, however significant it is or insignificant, you're entitled to go to the ER and then follow up with Work Connection, which they do. So someone could get a scrape on their knee on Friday, return back to work on Monday, but be injured on duty Saturday and Sunday because they couldn't follow up with the procedure to Work Connection, and we'd be here for that transfer for those 2 days.
Is there such a thing as someone being injured off duty and that injury being picked up as part of their duty?
No.
Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, can I just ask that? I think we took these as a bundle. I'd like to vote on number 5 separately.
Okay, we'll do that, yes. We will. Did you want to discuss number 5?
Well, is there anybody did Ryan notify anybody from the fire department to come here to discuss it?
I asked him to. I don't know the answer.
Very good. He's been here multiple times. I mean, if we're gonna pay,
Yeah.
I mean, that's substantial amounts of money. You know, we should be able to ask some questions. Can I see I don't know, I haven't read it. Thank you.
John, is there anything else that you wanted to add? While we're waiting for Councilor Leahy, and I know it's the proper way to do it, but and anybody injured on duty, you know, deserves to be paid. I don't think we're questioning that. I think, you know, our questions are procedures, and Work Connection is something that you understand, but we don't, you know, deal with that on a daily basis. But, if the transfer doesn't take place, or I don't think payroll is stopped because the transfer doesn't take place. I think this whole thing is an accounting thing that the auditor wanted years ago. So at the end of the year, we know how much money in salary was paid out, but there was no service because the person was out injured.
Right.
It's more of an accounting type thing as opposed to agreeing that, well, we certainly are not qualified, nor should we be in the position to agree that someone is injured on duty or someone is not injured on duty. We're just trying to make sense out of what I'm sure does have an impact on sometimes, the chief told us, not all times, on overtime when you gotta replace someone. And
And it just happens that that line item, injured on duty, falls within the personnel line items that you're looking for. And I think it's really not the spirit of your ordinance, because it's not really putting it into a personnel line item. In other words, it's not like, you're not taking money out of patrolmen and putting it in, and giving the chief a raise. You know what I mean?
Right. The reason we're doing this more and more, though, is an altogether different reason, which we might look at again, but that's here or there. And that's because there were a number of things that we, at the end of a fiscal year, would look at and say, hey, wait a minute, how did that happen?
Right.
And things that, under the radar got transferred from one account to another without the council knowing. This may go to an extreme, or seem to be an extreme too far the other way, because there's nothing I can see on this type of transfer that, other than the fact, I think we should have an idea of what's going on with injured on duty, in general terms. There's nothing that, could happen here that would prevent the salary, the check, paycheck being paid out to the individual who has it coming, whether they're injured or not injured. If that makes sense, but it's just, it's time consuming, but I think that it also gives us a chance to understand the system better. Counselor Sullivan.
Yeah. So, John, back to what I was saying a little earlier about the nature of the injuries, and you mentioned, if it was a certain one with an A and B, somebody would be able to track it back. Say, for example, if we had 20 officers a year that were being injured trying to subdue someone or chase someone, it'd be good. This isn't about getting somebody paid. It's about how do we reduce that number. So you brought up the issue of, tasers and stuff like that before, having a different way to go about it. It'd be helpful if we knew we were getting X number of injured on duty because of a certain type of incident, where there might be some things we can do to negate that expense, keep the officer safer, maybe even be less violent for the offender. If we could get a handle on some of this and a savings also. That's where I'm going with that question. So.
Yeah, like I said, it's hard to really determine all of that, but as far as our procedures go, when someone does get injured, a supervisor has a form they fill out, and in that form there are certain questions, and some of the questions are such as, can this injury have been prevented? And we answer that question, and we'll look at that answer to see if it can be prevented and how can it be prevented. And we'll address it at that time once we get that form back. So again, it depends on the injury. Every injury is different. It's a different scenario, different place, different actions. So it's kind of hard to put something into one category, like say assault and battery, and say, how can we prevent assault and battery? Well, you have to look at the context of what the assault and battery was, what it led up to, and prevention. So it's really hard to put a handle on certain things. But I think what we're doing now is significantly better than what we've done in the past with the tasers and with the additional training. And we have seen a big reduction in that number.
Counselor Bacon.
I just wanted to make sure I understood a comment that you made earlier, and that's that all of these transfers are coming through for people who have a documented work-related injury, right? So if it was a non-work-related injury, I guess they would get their sick time out of their regular bank.
Yes.
And then and I've asked this question of legal, and so I'm just interested to understand as a practical matter, if you know, how it works in your department. Say if somebody ran out of their bank at time, but they were still out injured, not work-related, would there be any other avenues available to them through the department to keep getting paid?
Yes, we have what's called a sick bank, where officers donate sick time in the beginning of every year, and that pot just accumulates, and if you are one of those individuals that donate to that fund, then you're entitled to some of those days.
So it's an internal
Yes.
reciprocal thing.
Right.
Do you know if this exists in other departments or just
don't know.
yours? Is it part of the contract or just something, an internal?
No, it's within the police department.
Okay. Thanks.
Any further discussion? And we, Counselor Leahy's request will,
It's fine.
okay.
You do it all.
And we'll do it as a package, items 3, 4, and 5. Chair will entertain a motion to adopt.
Motion adopted. Second.
And no further discussion, all those in favor? Any opposed? All 3 orders passed with a favorable recommendation to the full city council tomorrow evening. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We have one more item. Our city solicitor is here this evening to help us through this one.
About number 6,
We have 2 items, okay.
Inspector, transfer.
Okay, I'm sorry. 6 and 7 I'm counting together. I didn't mean for them to be, they're supposed to be together. It's one vote. The chair will entertain a motion to take 6 and 7 together for discussion. 6 is a transfer of $6,237,000, which we received the request on February 6th of this year from local inspector to the building inspector's line item. With it is a communication of a memorandum of understanding between the city's Hoyok Professional Supervisor Association, and this is not what's supposed to be here. Department of Public Works, I apologize. What's supposed to be here is professional supervisors don't,
Says professional supervisor
Associate and the department.
DPW.
yeah.
Local 1459.
Okay. Let's just act on item number 6, and I'll explain in a second. I'm not sure the mix-up, I think I understand the mix-up, but the MOU that we're supposed to have is an MOU, Paul, from the Professional Supervisors Association dealing with the item that's before us. For the purpose of the discussion, we'll take it off the table. All those in favor? Any opposed? Paul, you want to come in and,
Sure.
or do you want to stay there? I forget you got a mic out there, wherever you're comfortable.
Yeah, this is good.
Okay.
And
So you got-
that did throw us for a bit of a loop. Mr. McManus stopped by my office and said, "What's going on?" I was like, "I think it's a typo, but I'll let you know otherwise." As I understand, the Finance Committee had some questions after our last meeting about this proposed transfer. I provided a communication via email that I hope is before the counselors, but if not, I can answer any of those questions directly. But just to refresh your memory, this was a finance request or a financial transfer request that was submitted in response to a grievance. The city has an obligation to support its collective bargaining agreements under state labor law, including making appropriate appropriation requests, and that extends to memorandums of understanding. Essentially, this employee, the building commissioner, had a memorandum of understanding for additional compensation in connection with additional job duties, and as we went into in further detail at the prior meeting, that MOU was ultimately not funded in the most recent budget. There was also a cost of living adjustment that was not funded in the most recent budget. So as I think has been made clear both at the prior meeting and in the subsequent communication, the city does have an obligation to fund that cost of living adjustment. The city has an obligation to put the funding request for the memorandum of understanding before the council, but not necessarily an obligation to fund that. The result of not funding it would be that the city would have to renegotiate the memorandum of understanding, and if the parties could not meet a resolution on that, they would proceed to the Department of Labor Relations for mediation.
Councilor Leahy.
Yeah, thank you, Paul.
Yeah, so, as you know, and I'm sure, obviously you know, no matter what a MOU says or what it doesn't say, the city council has to appropriate funds, right? So refresh my memory, and how we voted on the MOU, or did we see it when it happened? How did that happen?
I don't believe the MOU was before the council.
Right.
So a copy of that was submitted with the communication.
Yeah, so a promise to pay somebody, knowing that the city council has to vote on that, that happened. It seems like it happens quite a bit. So walk me through now, so why the city council has to pay this when we didn't say we would pay it in the beginning?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
Well, the city council didn't say that they would be willing to pay this in the beginning, when the MOU happened. So now, why are you sitting here in front of us saying that we do have to pay it now?
So, to clarify, the obligation to fund is limited to the cost of living adjustment, which is a 1.5% cost of living adjustment in the collective bargaining agreement that the city, by funding the collective bargaining agreement in the prior fiscal years, takes on that responsibility. So I want to clarify that because I'm not saying that the city council has an obligation to fund the memorandum of understanding, but the city does have an obligation to submit that bargained memorandum of understanding to the council as part of its obligation, duty to support the underlying agreement.
Who's the union president of that union?
I believe it's Jeff Burkott, and then Damien Cody is the vice president, although I may have that switched.
I'd like to know that, because usually we hear from the union presidents, in regards to this. It's kind of unique having the city solicitor coming in, fighting for the union. I'm not used to this. How many people are in that union?
I'm not sure.
All right, so if the union president was here, he'd know that. And is every person in the union entitled to that 1.5 COLA?
Yes.
Is every employee in the city of Holyoke getting the 1.5 COLA?
No.
What makes them different than this union?
They're members of, not every employee of the city of Holyoke's a member of a union.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Reagan.
So if this agreement was never submitted to the council and the council never approved it, how can there be this new union in the city? You're saying historically we paid 1.5% COLA, and so the historical basis that we paid it once is causing us to be required to pay it now?
So also to clarify, I think there's a difference between the collective bargaining agreement, which is the collective bargaining agreement for all employees in the union, which contains this 1.5% COLA provision. That's separate from this memorandum of understanding with this particular employee.
So the MOU was a side agreement sitting next to the contract, is what you're saying? Separately
Correct.
negotiated for one person?
And that is common across all of our unions, where a change in job duties or some other change in function requires the city to bargain during the term of the collective bargaining agreement with the union.
Yes, and I am familiar with memos of understanding. They don't usually articulate a separate way of giving a raise to an individual outside of the way every other individual gets a raise. And I just want to speak relative to this transfer in opposition to it, because the performance evaluation was stated that this particular employee would be taking on a new crew of workers. And from what I could gather from the update on that department, there's maybe one more employee in that department, but I don't believe the intended crew ever happened in the way that it had been initially budgeted. So I think the basis, at least what I heard, was the basis for the increase over the COLA. I just don't think was supported by what was presented to us as the basis of a performance-based raise. And I believe, and I can't remember the numbers exactly, I know we had decreased the raise in the budget process for more than one department head, but I do believe in all cases they still did receive some increase that I believe would have covered the COLA. But I don't have those exact numbers in front of me. But I just think for MOUs to be negotiated and then used as leverage on the committee and the council after the fact when we weren't even aware of it is just not good, transparent government business with the taxpayers' dollars. Thank you.
Well, if we could just clarify this past conversation. When you, talking about the COLA was in a general negotiated contract with the association, which I always say I don't recognize as an association because they were never union and the association is not union. I don't recognize it as a collective bargaining unit, but be that as it may, it's been a collective bargaining unit for many years now. That 1.5% COLA was across the board for all of its members, and that was agreed upon, and at one point, I believe, before the city council. This MOU is separate, and during the budget process last year, when, as Councilor Vakins pointed out, the reduction was made to the salary line item, the reduction was more than what the MOU required. It was also the COLA.
As I recall, it was level funded at 70,000, so it would not have included the COLA.
And how much is the COLA for this particular person?
So I believe, just a moment, I have the number here. So the grievance is stating that the COLA should be applied to the $75,110 salary actually received in FY17, and it would be pointed out that the salary actually received is different than the salary appropriated because all of this fact pattern predates, not all of it, but some of the fact pattern predates the adoption of the budget transfer ordinance for personnel line items. So the COLA is applied to what is lawfully set as the employee's salary, which, again, I'm really taking a step back here and looking at this as what, DLR or, what it's going to be looked at from a labor law point of view. But that's why the COLA would apply to the 75,110 instead of the appropriated figure.
Let me get a chance.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah, so we asked for a hard number on the COLA. Can you tell me what portion, what part of that 6237 is COLA?
As I pull up a calculator here, it would be the difference between the 6327 and 75,110. So that would be, I'm not even going to try to, 1,217.
It's the numbers you're using, it's 75,000 times 1.5, which would be 1,125? 1.5% on 75,000?
75, 110.
Oh, 75, 110.
And so what's owed on the COLA is only for 1 year? Or is it for more than that?
It's for just last year's, because the preceding fiscal year 17 was restored by a budget transfer prior to that ordinance being in effect.
Okay, so it's safe to say the MOU represents $5,020. And the COLA portion is 1,217.
I'm not sure I follow.
The total amount requested is 6,237, of which 1,217 of that is COLA. That number is both the MOU and the COLA combined, is what the transfer amounts to, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I think it's 6,327.
Okay, that's not what's before us, but, all right. The reference, as far as the MOU goes, the additional staff, I initially thought it was just one demolition person. Now I understand it's 4 people, 1 demolition person, 2 additional inspectors, and 1 part-time office help?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
So he's actually supervising 4 more people, not 1.
Correct.
All right. So if we don't approve the MOU,
The effect would be,
is he still obligated to supervise those people that were part of the MOU?
yes, but the city would have an obligation to renegotiate that MOU. And if we went back and asked for a lower number and the employee disagreed with that, then we would be at an impasse, and the employee at that point would have further appeal rights.
And in the meantime, would he still be supervising them, or would someone else have to supervise them?
He has agreed, as terms of the grievance resolution, at least for this stage, to continue supervising, and I'm hopeful that that would continue if we went down that road. But there's no guarantee of that.
Counselor McGee.
Just something you mentioned, Paul, you said there was a transfer already prior to the budget ordinance being passed. You said?
Correct.
What was that transfer?
Wish I brought my timeline with me. Yeah, I don't recall the exact date. I know that was something we covered at the last meeting. But it was effectively, I believe, you're looking at fiscal year 16 was appropriated at 66,837. Council applied the COLA in that year, plus an additional 1,158, which looks like a partial acceptance of the MOU. And then following that appropriation, there was a transfer that brought it up to what the MOU plus COLA would have been, which is the 75,110.
So 2000, you said 2015, 66,837?
I believe that's fiscal year 16.
Okay, just want to make sure on my numbers. And at that point in time, they got COLA plus 1,158 as a raise. Just want to correct that on my notes.
I think, yeah, COLA plus 1,158, as, you know.
And then in 2017, prior to the ordinance being passed, they received another COLA at, what? What'd they get?
It would have been 1.5.
1.5% based off of 75,110. So they did receive that one?
They received the COLA based on the appropriated, I believe the appropriation was then made that year.
Based off of 75,110.
I think it was 70.
That's what I'm trying to get confirmation on.
The budget transfer was looking to bring it to 74,000 plus the COLA. So, I'm sorry, your question is the next fiscal year?
So Bellamy, because Bellamy was the one at the time, I'm assuming, the auditor,
I would believe so.
transferred 1.5% based off of 75,110 for 2017.
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact date.
That's what I need clarification on. Because if he did it based off of 75,110 and we haven't accepted the MOU and we had it based off of 70, did we give too much COLA at that transfer? Which then the question becomes, if it's really based off of 70, are we still owing on the COLA based on the numbers? See where I'm going? We based the COLA on 75,000 when it really should have been 70 when Bellamy changed it. So therefore, we overpaid at that time. If that's the case, how much did we overpay by to then allocate it back to what's now being asked? We might not owe 6,230, we might only owe 300. I'm making up numbers now. But you see where I'm going with the argument?
I'm not sure.
All right, so that I need clarification. I know others might have questions, but I'm gonna make a motion to table this until we start getting better
Did we,
numbers.
the chair will recognize that in 1 second, if we could just ask a couple of quick questions to make sure we get all our answers for the next time we bring it up. Paul, the item number 7 is, I thought was the answer to my question when we talked, is the MOU between the building inspector and the city, because of these additional employees, is never been put before us. What item number 7 is the Professional Supervisors Association, and this goes back to 2015. Part of it is negotiating for these positions, which if I remember, Counselor Sullivan was the lead in creating them with some very good arguments and placing them in the building department. But it does not mention anything about a salary increase for the building inspector. So the MOU is a separate from the establishment of these positions. Can we get a copy of the MOU?
Do you have the MOU should be the title memorandum of agreement, building commissioner job duties? Is that what you have before you?
No. I don't think we've ever had it before us.
That is, it should have been sent in the February 21st email as an attachment. Looking at it.
In this folder, I'll look elsewhere. I talked to our administrative assistant, but we have a February 6th letter dated describing the grievance that's been filed, which you've, updated us on this evening. But we don't have, to my knowledge, we do not have the original MOU. And
I could print a copy out of that tonight. I think it was sent in the February 21st email.
email to the city clerk?
No, it was just to the committee members.
Okay. That's not the best, or it's not the proper way to do it. If you could file these things with the city clerk, so the full city council received the agenda and the full city council can make their own determination, you know, if they want copies and know that they're putting it in this committee to act on it. But we do need the language. Councilor Leahy mentioned something, just for the record. I did ask Ryan to reach out to whoever the president of the association was, and I did ask him to reach out to the department head also to invite him into the meeting. I think I heard from someone else that the department head may be away, but I'm not.
Oh, the department.
Yeah.
Do we know
And
who the
then,
union president is?
I'm not even sure who the president of the association, because that's changed over the years. I just asked that they be invited and to come into the meeting, but I'm not sure how successful Ryan was in reaching out. But it was, you know, hopefully, I had hoped that they'd be here this evening. I hope Damien would be here this evening too, but someone told me that he might be away. Is there any other questions before we act on the
Yeah.
motion? Councilor Leahy?
Yeah, thank you. And you answered this question to me, but I think the public just would like to know. So this grievance, who heard this grievance?
Myself,
And so you're obviously with the employee, and so who was the union representative that was with you?
Mr. Cody.
So he's not the employee as well? It's a different person?
No, he is,
So he was there acting as the union rep and the employee?
correct,
So it's just the two of you?
correct.
Is that standard?
It's a small union. I mean, it's certainly standard for the city to, the law department to meet on behalf of the employer in this case, and address a grievance. We do that with NAGE, and we do that with the Professional Supervisors Association.
So the percentage of times that you deal with people like that, unions, and what, I mean, does the employee, does the person always win against the city, I guess, for lack of better terms? Like, how's that go? What's the percentage?
I mean, it's such a case-by-case, matter. I don't think it could be reduced to a percentage of winning.
Okay, so in 2016, this position paid $66,000. Going into 2018, it's going to be $75,110.
I'm not sure what the appropriation for the next budget year is.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? The chair will recognize a motion that has been made and seconded to lay item number 6 on the table for the purpose of getting some more information through our city solicitor, and at the next meeting, we'll try to get whoever the president of the association is in, and also invite the employee in terms of the transfer itself, because it's not only a grievance, but it's also the employee's department, and that being his budget. All those in favor? Any opposed? So moved. I will suggest the confusion, I think I now understand in item 7, is it's not the full memorandum. It's not the memorandum we're looking for. It's the original negotiation for the positions which led to the memorandum of understanding. So I would just, it's on the table, I think, more for informational purposes. I would just suggest we keep item number 7 on the table.
Motion is keep on the table, stay on the table.
All those in favor? Any opposed? We have a meeting scheduled for next Monday, the 12th. I did have a meeting with the mayor and a conversation about a number of things. The key is the independent auditor is, I believe, coming to a conclusion this week in terms of what the deficiencies are in prior year budgets, which means we can now take some action, you know, in the near future to balance the budget, and we can, you know, after getting free cash certified, we can then balance the budget and go forward with tax classification and so forth. But we have a number of, well, I've only got 2 orders, and I asked Ryan to clarify this. Linda, the ordinance committee took care of the order which was put in your committee about the debit card and, you know, in particular, the Christmas tree.
Active in the committee,
Yeah.
it's tabled right now.
Okay. And now I have an order by Counselor McGee about inviting in several people, you know, which includes our former city auditor who recently resigned, Melanson and Heath, and also if we can get the former auditor and former purchasing director in. We also have a second one, I'm sorry, that's by you, Todd, and then we have one by Counselor Lisi, which is very similar. And that's the only two I have that are directly related. And then Counselor Bacon, you have an order on to approve, anyone who approves the pays for who have exhausted all paid benefits for non-work related injuries be required to have the approval with the, and are you asking the Finance Committee to review this? It's,
Council sent it to finance.
okay. Because it sounds like if we're going to go forward, it would eventually need an ordinance?
I think so.
Okay, so I'll put that on the next agenda just to get it to the ordinance, if nothing else.
Okay.
And then, we still have, I don't think we have to deal with it now, but that transfer in from supplies into temp seasonals. But does anybody remember any other orders from our last full city council meeting about the fiscal issues?
Well, as for the credit card and the debit card, all the receipts,
That went to ordinance, and they're working on that.
Well,
I
and
asked
the-
for it like within 5 days, and I haven't received any of them.
We adopted that though, right? And sent that, yeah. I'm talking about what came to committee. Did we send a copy to committee? Because it's not here. Yeah.
I think it might have been, I can't remember for sure. They were bouncing all over, but I can tell you that the debit cards have been given to our city solicitor by procurement office and Mr. Soto from the school department.
But our order consisted of having the records.
Yes, and so what I also did, so we have two paths going, because that requested the records, and in ordinance, as part of the information, we have requested the backup for a summary sheet that was provided to us that was just a sheet with numbers on it and departments. So we've asked for I have sent emails out, I think I copied them to you, Todd, and Joe as chair of finance, requesting the statements, the receipts, all the backup to tie to that spreadsheet. Because the spreadsheet's just a list.
Peoples, I thought.
I don't know.
We do it online. I'm on
Why can't you
Peoples.
just
Yeah.
go to, okay, just call it Peoples. Go to Peoples and say, I want to see date of birth, when it was issued, to present. They have to provide that.
Well, and that's what I'm thinking our treasurer, procurement officer, and auditor can easily give to us. I mean, I don't think we're supposed to have to go get it, are we? It should have been already sent as a communication. I mean, it's not difficult. We'll be taking it up at the next ordinance committee
It'll be in
meeting.
Wednesday night for the public service.
And the treasurer's coming in to you Wednesday, right? Assuming Mother Nature cooperates.
Don't sound like it.
No.
Okay, if anyone can think of anything else, just give me a jingle or a text or an email. We're tentatively on for next Monday.
Okay.
The issue, yes, that works for everybody still. The issue is, the discussion really needs, I think, the final report, or actually maybe a presentation of the final report from the independent audit team. And I hoping that will be ready. I'm gonna find out, next 2 days. But I have a feeling that if it's not ready, these two orders, we're not gonna get very far on them.
I think one of the orders is by almost everyone, have the former auditor in as to his letter,
Right.
his exit.
Right, and
Not so much of accounting, but letters specifically said,
See,
stuff to say.
I remember that, and
So that was, and it wasn't just me, that was Nelson filed it, Jimmy filed it. That one's missing from there.
well, it's the city council finally must invite the auditor Josh Purcell into, yeah, that's here.
Yeah, so that, so
Right.
that's nothing to do with the outside counsel, it's everything to do with what,
He said to me,
Right.
he's more than happy to come in.
Excuse me. I agree and disagree. I think part of it does have to do with the answers of what we're gonna hopefully hear from the outside audit from, yeah. I mean, it's connected. There's a lot more than that. And, I mean, we can go forward on that. I have no problem with that, but I just thought if we're gonna have a good roundtable discussion, that we have everything on our table to discuss it.
Joe, if I may.
Yep.
Just by way of information for your committee, at ordinance committee at the last meeting, it became evident that every expenditure made with the debit card was done with no paper authorization prior to the withdrawals from the accounts. And Brian Smith and Dave Martins did come into that meeting. And I think they would be very informative to us around tightening up the procedures and protocols in the city. And I think every committee should hear from them. I left that meeting that night just in dismay, but also feeling that if these folks could come in here and tell us what protocols existed in those offices at the time they left, and we can make sure that they are followed now. I mean, every month we lose, that goes by is another month with procedures and protocols not followed. And this was stated publicly, repeatedly. Verbal authorization to the procurement office, the card came out, the money was withdrawn.
And I agree. And I say it's time that we get everybody back to fundamentals and go forward. Because I think what we're finding is most of this is accounting issues, not missing money. It's just accounting for everything, and the small things lead to big things, is what I said to our acting auditor at your meeting last week.
Yes, you did.
Okay, so we're on for Monday. We'll do something, and I'll do my best to get all the answers. Counselor Sullivan?
Yeah, just as far as clarification on orders, don't we also have some orders in regarding the Inspector General and State Auditor?
those were,
The state auditor's tabled in council, and the inspector general was referred out.
yeah, that one was referred out.
Yeah. So it's not been assigned to the
Unanimous.
committee.
So who will send that, Ryan, or how does that get sent?
I, the admin to,
Has he done that, do you know? Where is he? Is he here? Downstairs.
Okay, so any further discussion on our next meeting? It'll be next Monday with everything we possibly can get in front of us. Anticipating that, the answers are here, we're also gonna be facing some type of a meeting. Todd, I'm not sure if the mayor's reached out to you, but I'm guessing that he will be. So we can get the votes in to balance, and then the assessors have to complete their public hearing. They continued it, they didn't close it.
What?
The assessors have to complete their public,
Before you, so we needed the votes for what?
balance the budget,
Balance the budget, okay.
okay? We can't balance, all we need is, we need a free cash to be certified, which they don't, the independent audit is gonna tell us what is the amount that has to be reconciled. Okay, is it 200,000, 400,000, whatever it might be. We then take a portion of free cash to balance the budget, by which we do every year, to offset, whatever is the number that needs to be taken care of. Then we know what we have left in free cash, but once we do that, now lets the assessors take the classification vote, which is the final, or if we wish to do classifications, the final way of adjusting the tax rate. The tax rate is actually set once the budget is balanced, but we can adjust it if we choose.
Joe, do you have any indication that our cash was overstated in the book?
I don't, the number I'm hearing, and I don't want to throw it out there, but it's not this year. They've caught up on this year, they're through December in terms of closing out the accounts, which is important. But it's the prior years, and a lot of it has to do in the area of health insurance, and some of it has to do with things that have not been posted correctly.
Right,
And it's not
but
just, the
that can-
auditors, it's all around. And it just became a perfect storm where accountability is what wasn't there. I like to hear from Melanson Heath why they didn't resolve it in their annual audit, or didn't, or what they did do or what they couldn't do and why. And then, excuse me, and then the independent auditors to know what these numbers are.
Yeah, because it was $1 million problem that became a $2.5 million problem.
Yeah, I'm
that-
confident it's not a $2 million problem. I don't
But I
think it's even
mean,
$1
a
million problem.
reconciliation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the number I'm not gonna say a number until I know, until they tell us, because, it's, they have not, there's been no direct communication, I don't think, to any of us in terms of in terms of numbers.
Okay.
Just, ideas that
Okay.
they're almost there.
Thank you.
But everybody will be the first to know if I get it or Todd gets it. I'm sure the same thing. We'll get it right out to you. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, everyone.
So this whole salary, I can't talk to 4 of you, I can only talk to 2.